How you doing? This is Jason from SCHLEY'S Bonsai and Supplies. We haven't been on YouTube in a little bit because we've just been busy at the nursery. There's been a ton of new things that we've been working on. We've been working on the koi pond, the walkways, just making this a little bit more inviting for guests. We're working on doing a lot more events out here, specialty things. So we want it just to be a nice experience for when people come out. Today, I want to talk about Satsuki azaleas, or Satsuki azaleas. A friend of mine, Dale Brock from Texas, asked on our Patreon. He asked if we could do a talk on azaleas specifically. I will say that here in Central Florida, Satsuki azalea care is slightly different than a lot of what the books say. I got most of my knowledge from my friend and mentor, Mike Rogers. He's been doing bonsai for 46 years. He has some amazing Satsuki azaleas. We found over the last 20 years of growing them myself that only certain varieties do well here long term. There's a couple things with azaleas that set them apart from any other bonsai. One is they are very susceptible to certain types of fungus and insects, more so than some of the other types. Standard care here in Central Florida is I typically let them flower for 2 years, and then on the 3rd year I take all the buds off and I repot them. This tree is not going to be repotted this year. This one was imported from Japan 2 years ago. I got it from, I think, the largest azalea importer in the United States. This is the first year that I've had it, so we did let it bloom. The blooms are tired. They've been on there for about 3 weeks, which is about a week longer than I really wanted to have them on there, but we've been getting ready for our event. At this time, I take all of the flowers off, whether they're opened or not. When you take the flowers off, you also take the little seed pod off out of the center. And what that does is it redirects the strength back into the azalea, because blooming really tires out an azalea. If you look, there's the seed pod. We make sure we take those seed pods off. If you don't, the azalea is going to focus on seed production, and it's going to greatly weaken the tree. Azaleas are not a tree in nature. If you put them in the ground, they'll never become a tree. They're a shrub. So some of the other things that we have to make sure of is, as I said before, keeping it in a positive state of growth. But also, if we have shoots that sprout out from the base, we make sure we eliminate those, because azaleas are not apically dominant. They actually are very apically weak, because they're normally a shrub in nature. So some of the ways that we counteract that apical weakness is we leave more foliage up top when we style a tree, an azalea, than we typically would with a normal apically dominant tree. If you don't leave it full, you can get weakness up top and you'll get dieback. I like using organic fertilizer on azaleas. If you use chemical fertilizers, that's fine. As a matter of fact, right after it blooms like this and I take the flowers off, the first dose of fertilizer I use is a liquid, and that'll give it like a little bit of a boost just to kind of help it recover after its blooming cycle. But then I'll use typical organic fertilizer. Some people are big fans of Green King or BioGold. Some people use a liquid fertilizer like fish emulsion. Kelp meal is a really good organic fertilizer additive. Anything that's acid-based is really good. Some people will put a product called Mur acid on it twice a year. That's also a great way to keep it more acidic. If your azalea becomes too alkaline, you actually can start getting chlorosis, can get a chlorotic condition, just because it can't uptake certain nutrients because it's too alkaline. They really do like an acidic growth. I think ideal is 5.5, I think, to 6 is ideal for an azalea. Maybe even a little bit more to 5.2, but I think 5.5 to 6 is a good good pH. You do take your time taking the all the flower buds off, clean it up, and the next thing that we do after we've taken the flower buds, you'll see at the base of where the flower was, there's 3 shoots that are coming from that flower bud. Typically what I'll do with my sterilized tool is I'll take out one of the 3 to leave 2, and I'll shorten the other 2 shoots, and that'll give me the 2 instead of a bunch, and it makes it easier to wire and shape and to build my branch structure. I'm going to go through this entire branch and do the same thing and trim it out. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just setting up the branches for future growth. This is perfect Shohin size once I wire everything down at 8 inches or just below. So I'm trying to make it just a little bit more compact, but also opening it up so we can get a lot of back budding along these. This tree I said was probably imported last year. It's, after looking at the structure, it probably was 2 or even 3 years, because when they're let grow a little bit, the inside shoots tend to get shaded out and die off, and it just continues to grow. So what this does is your yearly maintenance. This is bringing it back, and done correctly, these branches will get more and more refined very quickly, and you'll be able to have nice layers. Another thing I want to talk about is the soil. In Japan they use pure Kanuma or a Kanuma blend because it's acidic based. I don't use Kanuma here. What I typically will use with azaleas is lava, akadama, pumice, some perlite, and when I repot, I make sure I put a little bit of sphagnum, shredded sphagnum, on the surface, because azaleas are a surface rooter, so we want to make sure that the surface roots don't dry out right after a repot. I do not put these guys in full direct sun after about mid-May. They get in this dappled light, a little brighter than this is, but we want to make sure down here in South Florida we keep them out of the full sun, because they do burn up pretty bad out here in full sun. Although up north I see them in full sun all year and they look fantastic. So this is basically some of the cares that we do. Let me just finish wiring this up and I'll show you what it looks like then. Okay, well, this is the tree all wired out. It's in the traditional Miyagi style, informal upright. It's exactly at 8 inches right now. Probably it'll end up being just a little bit more than that once it fills in and we get some more ramification. The wires will stay on 3 to 6 months. If they start digging in a little bit, take them off. Don't leave them on. Wire scars on azaleas take a very long time to heal, if ever. Azaleas have very thin bark and very thin calcium material, so it's better to err on unwiring too soon than leaving it on too long, like say a juniper or something. You want to make sure that you get this on a regular spray cycle. You don't want to get piercing, sucking insects on these. You don't want to have fungus on these. So hitting it with, we use a product that's Cleary's and Daconil. We did pull this in February and check the roots. That's how I thought originally. It was been here for a year because it had good root growth, but it hadn't started circling the pot. You want to make sure that you don't ever get an azalea pot bound to where the drainage is inhibited, because as soon as you start having root issues with an azalea, you start having issues with the top. If you're going to change the mix from a different type, it's really important that when you take it out, you get rid of the old mix directly underneath the trunk and put fresh mix under there, specifically so it doesn't stay too wet and you don't get any root rot. Root issues are a very real thing with azaleas as well. I like this pot with azaleas, even though the trunk's a little bit thin for the depth of the pot. It's really important that you have a little bit deeper pot, again, for better root growth and better drainage. A deeper pot does drain better than a really shallow pot. Although visually this would look really good in a really shallow pot, horticulturally it could start developing a problem, especially in the heat of the summer when the tree is already under a decent amount of stress. But I hope you've learned something today. If you have any problems or any questions, please comment in the comment section, and I'll see if I can help as best I can. There's a lot of species-specific terms that I didn't go over today. I just wanted to get basic care of azaleas because down here in Florida we can grow them. They grow really well, but a lot of people don't know that the simple different things that we have to take care of azaleas versus up north where they're frankly a little bit tougher. They're more vigorous, they grow better. There's a lot more varieties you can go up north. We're kind of limited. I specifically have about 40 varieties that I know I can grow here, but I've probably had 80 varieties in the last 20 years that they don't seem to do very well. So know your area, know what you can grow if you want it. If you have any questions on any specific varieties, you can text me. If I know, I'll give you the best answer that I can. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it.